If someone missed the video in 6 parts, then a hint has been made for you in the upper right corner. Bakugo and Todoroki, on their way to retake their license, met Meika and AII Might, who will be accompanying them instead of Aizawa, who is now looking after Mirio. Before leaving, Gran Torino informs AII Might that they figured out where Kurogiri is, so they twisted him. But out of nowhere, one of all for one's most loyal subordinates, the monster villain Gigantomachi, appeared. He attacked the heroes and the police, and Gran Torino barely managed to fly out of there along with Kurogiri and Shikachi. When they returned with help, the villain was nowhere to be found. Upon arrival, AII Might meets Prospector, who has come to oversee his son's retake and also talk to AII Might. At the same time, Todoroki and Bakugo met Yorashi, along with Kami and Shishikura. They are being watched by Kasaka and Mera, who will test the guys. A group of students on the retake will need to find a common language with the children and change their behavior for the better. Bakugo offered to have a duel with him to determine the leader among them. Yorashi tried to find an approach to children by learning their character, but he did not succeed. Kami and Todoroki also tried to negotiate with the children, but nothing came of it, and the children staged a rout with their quirks. Meanwhile, Prospector and AII Might started a conversation while watching the test. The Prospector does not understand what it means to be a symbol of the world and what to do. The Almighty advised him to find his own path, and it is not necessary to follow his path, since they are different. The students realized that it is not so important for children who to attack, and therefore the battle of generations began. During this fight, the guys came up with a plan where they will try to show the children their quirks, as well as something unique, so that the children want to repeat it. Then Kami created her quirk of the Northern Lights. Todoroki froze all the children's devices and created an ice slide with fiery illumination. And Yorashi cheered up with his breeze, and even Bakugo was able to motivate the leader guy. The guys realized that they just need to rise in the eyes of the children so that they show respect for them. Then Kasaka admitted that the guys passed this test. It was also because of this performance that the Prospector realized that to be a symbol is to be a contagious example. At the exit of the building, the guys met Shishikuru and the heroes, who were discussing the case of Toga, when she reincarnated as Kami. The Prospector approached Todoroki and said that he was proud of his son, and he would definitely become a hero that Todoroki could be proud of. With this gesture, we were shown that the Prospector had changed. October came, during which time Nightai's funeral took place. His agency will now be run by his deputy Centipede. Eri also regained consciousness during this time, but her emotional state was not stable, so she was forbidden to visit, and her horn on her head decreased. The students have started to prepare their performance for the Cultural Festival Arc to be held in Yui. Aizawa gave his class a task to come up with a topic for the speech. As a result of several series of Jiro's musical and vocal talent, the guys chose a musical dance number. The next day, Deku and Mirio visited Eri and brought her fruit. It turned out that Eri herself asked to meet the guys. This was her first request after she woke up. However, they decided not to tell Eri about Nighteye, and Eri also apologized for Mirio losing his quirk because of her. But for Mirio, this is not so important. The main thing is that Eri is in order. It was also revealed that Eri couldn't smile, so Deku decided to surprise her and show her the festival. He asked Aizawa to help with it. However, the teacher needs to coordinate this with the principal. Meanwhile, the police began to freshen up the YouTube channel, on which the villain Generous and La Brava post videos of their robberies. Magnanimous considers himself a local Robin Hood. He does not commit ordinary robberies, but he punishes stores for expired goods. However, his goal is to do something global and record his name in history. Magnanimous has been blogging for 6 years, and La Brava is editing. However, Stain's recent appearance on the network has taken away his entire audience, and the League of Villains is gaining popularity quite well. Now Magnanimous wants to gain popularity at the cultural festival. At this time, the students are preparing for the festival, and they are also drinking tea that Yaoyuros bought in a small restaurant that we need to remember. The guys also plan to add various special effects to their performance in the form of their quirks, and they have already managed to distribute duties on stage. After that, Deku met with AII Might and told him that he could already use 20% of the power, but for 100% he was not ready yet, so he was stumped. AII Might recommended that he develop a long-range attack, and the hero had already thought of everything. When Deku changed his clothes, All Might asked him to use 20% of his strength and direct the blow in any direction. Thus, Deku got a blow with compressed air. Meanwhile, Mirio, Eri, and Aizawa arrived at Yui, as the director had agreed for Eri to attend the festival. So that she would not panic, they decided to bring Eri in advance and introduce her to the school, because there is still a whole month to prepare. Meanwhile, Clasp is preparing a performance made up of various dramas. There will also be a beauty contest at the festival, where beautiful ladies have already signed up. Deku and Mirio gave Eri a tour of the Yui. When they were done, they went to the dining room, where they met Principal Nezu and Midnight. From their words, they learned that the police were against the festival because of the turbulent situation, but the director managed to convince them. But to avoid misunderstandings, guards were posted in the form of a watchdog hero. A week passed, Deku was fired from the dancers and transferred to the special effects team. And in the mornings, he also continued to train with All Might. Also there, he accidentally met Mei, who promised him to make new special gloves. All Might reported that he also used various attachments for training, but they were too bulky, and so he stopped using his true form. Deku, on the other hand, decided to look for such devices, but instead he came across a video of the Magnanimous, where he talked about his affairs through a tea review. Meanwhile, Magnanimous and La Bravo work out a plan to get into the school. First, they will go along the alleys, then along the park, and after that the generous one should look into a small tea room and drink the same tea there. In his opinion, this tea is ideal for the job they want to do, and after that they will again reach the mountain through the alleys and already get to the school. And so that the hound dog does not find them by smell, they will have to smear themselves with mud. Also, La Brava will have to get into the Yui network and disable their defense system. The day before the start of the festival, the guys hold a dress rehearsal, where during the check it turned out that the rope on which the deck will hang Aoyama has deteriorated, and since Yaoyorozu is already sleeping, Deku will have to go to the store in the morning for a new rope. The store itself is located near the place where Generous and La Brava will have tea. The next day, at 6:30, Deku goes to train with All Might. Mai also arrives and hands Deku his new ranged gloves. And having already tried them, Deku goes to the store at 7:50 to get the rope. And when Deku returns with his purchase, he stumbles upon Gentle and La Brava in disguise, who were just leaving the tea room where they drank the same tea. Deku, upon hearing the name of the tea, remembered that it was Yaoyorozu who prepared it for them. In turn, the Magnanimous, hearing Deku's thoughts, decided to find out how he knew about this cool tea. Deku replied that he had tried it at a friend's. From this conversation, Generous realized that Deku was from Yui, and Deku recognized the voice of Generous from the video. Then Deku decided to prevent the villain from getting to Yui and disrupting the festival. Then Magnanimous and La Brava took out a camera and started filming. It turned out that the quirk of the Magnanimous can make everything elastic, even air. Then he pushed Deku away with his quirk, and they ran towards Yui. However, Deku went after them. It was also revealed that La Brava recognized Deku from seeing him at a sports festival. Deku used a long-range attack on the villains, thereby slamming them into the building. To delay Deku, Magnanimous threw a steel beam on him, and using his quirk, he flew towards Yui. Deku, realizing that if the villains are discovered and the signal sounds, the festival will be cancelled. Then he freed himself and went after them. Deku took advantage of the already left air membranes that Magnanimous and La Brava were moving on, and Deku was able to catch up with the villains with his covering and capture them. We are shown the story of La Brava, from which it became clear that she is in love with the Magnanimous, and she is already over 20 years old, and her quirk is called Love. When she confesses her love to someone, she gives a powerful boost of energy. In this connection, the Magnanimous freed himself with renewed vigor and slammed Deku into the ground, and also crushed him with a bunch of layers of air. But Deku, as if Naruto had made a tunnel, and getting out asked why the Magnanimous was doing all this. Then we were shown his past, from which it became clear that the Magnanimous simply dreams of glory in order to get into history for posterity. But because of one case when he wanted to help, but in the end did harm, he became a criminal. However, he looks more like a blogger than a villain, as his goal is simply to become popular. And since he was not accepted as a hero, he had no other option but to become a criminal. He also does this for La Brava, as this is their common goal. As a result, Deku and Magnanimous began to fight. However, Deku, after hearing the story of the Magnanimous, changed his attitude towards him and began to respect him. Although before that he considered the Magnanimous to be a weak opponent, Deku realized that they are similar to him, since his goal too has already gone beyond his personal one, and has become a ray of hope for those who do not see a brighter future. And since there are people who recognized him, he wants to live up to their expectations. After some nice dialogue, Magnanimous threw the sounding board against a tree, and La Brava ran closer to Yui to catch the signal and start disabling the defense system. Deku tried to stop her, but the Magnanimous stood in his way, and they continued to fight. It turns out that Magnanimous has also changed his attitude towards Deku, and now he fights for the honor of a hero like Deku. However, Deku used a ranged attack and slammed the Magnanimous into the ground. At this time, La Brava saw Watchdog and Ectoplasm approaching and decided to return to the Magnanimous and warn him. But she saw that Deku had already won. Then La Brava attacks Deku with powerful blows, saying that the Magnanimous is the person for whom she lives. The Magnanimous understood that through his fault La Brava could also be imprisoned. Due to La Brava's emotions, the Magnanimous temporarily regained strength, and he pushed Deku back a couple of tens of meters. Heroes appeared, and the Magnanimous decided to give up, and also to expose everything so as not to involve La Brava in this matter. But the dog smelled that Disciple Yui was still here. Then the dog began to ask where he was, and then Deku himself appeared. The Magnanimous is happy, because it was a hero like Deku who dealt him a decisive blow. It turned out that the Magnanimous had once studied at the heroic faculty, but since that time only a heroic shadow remained. However, he believes that Deku will be a real hero and make a truly bright future. After this beautiful speech, the dog took the Magnanimous and La Brava to the police station. In the meantime, the festival is already in full swing, and the class performance will be at 10 o'clock sharp. Therefore, for a start, Deku, under the supervision of Ectoplasm, ran after the abandoned rope. Deku arrived at the appointed time, as did Mirio and Eri. Bakugo caused an explosion with his quirk, and the performance began, where they played the opening of My Hero Academia. The performance went great. Even Eri had a smile on her face. After that, a beauty contest began, where several beauties of the Academy performed. Ultimately, Nejiro won. The end of November is coming. By this time, they decided to transfer Eri to Yui, since her parents abandoned her, and the only relative of the Yakuza boss is in a coma. Since she has nowhere to go, she will live with the teachers. It is also necessary to look after the power of Eri, and Mirio will help in. Meanwhile, Wildcats have arrived in Yui to work again. They also received a message from Tartarus, where All for One is being held, and they tried to get Ragdoll's quirk back, but because of the danger, All for One decided to keep him on a leash. The cats also started talking about ranks and said that twice a year they count the points of heroes and make a list of top heroes. Points are counted by the number of cases solved, the level of assistance to the community, and the percentage of people's support. Accordingly, the higher the place, the more useful the hero. This year, only the first results have been summed up so far, and soon the second results will have to be published without the participation of the Almighty. During the announcement of the results, the heroes will go up to the stage, where the prospector takes the first place. After the award, the Endeavor was approached by Hawk, who was on the list of the top 10 heroes, and said that he was never a fan of All Might, but his resignation came as a shock to the bird, and now he wants the prospector to be an icon just like All Might. Also, Hawk wanted to team up with the prospectors as there were strange cases in his hometown, and it was rumored to be Nomu. Meanwhile, Dabi, whose voice everyone listens to Nomu, he sent a high-class Nomu into battle. Prospector and Hawk went to dinner at a cafe, where the bird said that he had conducted his own investigation and found out that there were a lot of rumors about Nomu, but he did not find the Nomu themselves. Therefore, the Hawk wants the prospector to reassure the inhabitants of the country and say that these Nomu are just rumors. The bird wants to make a trusted leader out of the prospector. However, they are suddenly attacked by the same high-class Nomu and asks who is the strongest here. Prospector will fight Nomu, and he left the evacuation of people to the Hawk. However, before the fight begins, we move on to the prospector's family to reveal a little about his personality. Fuyumi and Nacho's older children came to visit Ri's mother, or the prospector's wife, who was overjoyed that Shota was finally writing letters to her. Natsuo then reminded the family that Prospector's father was officially number 1, but people don't know how bad he is or what he did to them. It turns out that 10 years have passed and Natsuo now considers him an outsider. But since the Prospector is not currently on television, Natsuo thinks that the Prospector is trying to renounce the past. However, Rei said that this was not true, since the Prospector came to her and brought flowers that she likes, and he remembered the look of the flowers from the first meeting, since she only talked about it once. She also thinks that he most likely came many times, but she did not see him, as she is still afraid of him. But she understands for sure that he does not want to forget his family and the past, and he wants to fix everything. Meanwhile, Prospector damaged Noma with his first attack, but he immediately recovered. Because of this, the Prospector realized that only Dark Nomu have the power of restoration, since light ones cannot regenerate. The Prospector also realized that this Nomu is special, as he can speak. Then the Prospector attacks Nomu with a powerful flame, but he responds by slamming the Prospector into the building, and then cuts the building with his lengthening limb with a quirk. In this regard, the hawk launches its indestructible feathers in order to have time to evacuate people. However, he doesn't have enough feathers to get all the people out of the building, so he decides to start with the people in the danger zone. With his quirk, the hawk can control each of his feathers, and as a result, he was able to immediately evacuate 76 people. To prevent the building from falling on people, the Prospector cut the upper part of the building into small pieces with his attack. However, immediately after that, the Nomu began to unleash the other Nomu, and the hawk decided that while the Prospector would fight the main Nomu, he would take on all the others. However, the bird is not particularly strong against strong enemies, so its main purpose is to support the Prospector, who at that time began to overheat his body, due to which he began to become slower. Therefore, the Prospector remembered that Nomu was looking for the strongest, and in order to focus his attention on himself, the hero said he began to provoke Nomu with words. Thereby, the Prospector, for the sake of the family, is going to incinerate Nomu with one attack. He attacks him sharply with full incineration. However, Nomu detaches his head so as not to burn out completely, and in this way he is fully restored, and after a counterattack, wounds the Prospector in several places. As the miner tries to get back on his feet, the whole world continues to watch their clash. The Prospector comes to his senses and attacks Nomu again, but he overtakes him in speed and imprints a blow into the building. And as the Prospector regains his senses, Nomu targets the people, who begin to scream in panic that this is all because they do not have a peace symbol. However, there was a young Itadori in the crowd who started yelling for everyone to stop talking nonsense. Because they still have a Prospector whose fire has not yet been extinguished, he is still fighting. The Prospector rises again and starts chasing Nomu, but cannot catch up with him in terms of speed. He also reports that the pain keeps him awake and makes him stronger. A hawk comes to the rescue, which with its feathers increases the speed of the Prospector. When the hero overtakes Nomu, he begins to behave like an animal and bites the Prospector. But the hero grabs Nomu and starts lifting him up so that his attack does not harm people, as the Prospector wants to use all his strength. The Prospector uses the most powerful technique and completely burns Nomu, thereby winning. The hero lands on the ground and raises his hand in the same way as the AII Might did. Thus, the Prospector laid the foundation for a new symbol of peace. At night, in a dream, Deku saw all the previous avatars one for all. When he touched his hand with the first wielder of this power, Deku shattered the window with his quirk in shock. If you want the next part, then write about it in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, like and press the bell so as not to miss new videos. AniMap was with you. Bye everyone.